I remember once upon a time we studied a division of 7 types of mind.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the 7th one, I think, was between non-ascertained...
Wrong consciousness.
No. Okay, it was subsequent cognizer, I think. Can you help me here? What was the 7th one?
In terms of the... Yeah.
Was
Yeah, you're right.
Doubt,
It's not...
correctly assuming, non-ascertained, subsequent, valid, inferential, and valid.
Valid was one of them?
Valid, yes, of course. Direct perception.
Direct perception? No, it was direct perception, not a valid cognizer. That's different.
Direct.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's these 7 awarenesses, but I didn't. There's a purpose of doing this, but I didn't do it here because people get so confused about those 7.
But was it subsequent cognizer?
Oh, the 7th. Oh, sorry. What is it? Munsum, Jepak. So first it's direct perception, then it's inferential cognizer. Munsum, Jepak. I don't remember now. I thought it was the 3rd. Yeah, actually the 3rd. Then correctly assuming. Pardon?
It's subsequent inferential cognition.
No. That's it's either a subsequent cognizer or an inferential cognizer. You can have a subsequent inferential cognizer.
Just before, after that.
Yeah. So.
Correctly assuming.
Well, there's definitely the direct perceiver and there's the inferential cognizer. Those are there. Subsequent, but the problem with the subsequent cognizer, it's not really accepted by higher schools. Why? Because the way they define a valid cognizer, they don't define a valid cognizer, they use the word prime cognizer. So there is this idea in the lower schools where they say the first moment perceives its object freshly, and then the subsequent moments are only subsequent. And that's like, what? You know, like in the Prasangika school, they don't assert that. They say a valid cognizer is not a valid cognizer because the first moment, it doesn't refer to just the first moment of perception, it refers to any moment of realization. That's a... I mean, in English, there's a different translation used even. There is a mind called pramana in Sanskrit, sema in Tibetan. And in the lower schools, they describe pramana as a prime cognizer. That's the translation that's used in English. In Tibetan and Sanskrit, so it's the same. Which means, like, they talk about the mind that not only does it realize its object, but it's the first moment of realizing something. That is a fresh perception. In the Prasangika school, they say first moment, second moment. It's all direct. It's all the realization of its object. Whether the first moment, the second moment, they don't differentiate. So they say even the second moment is a sema or pramana. A third moment is pramana. So then the English translation that is used to describe that kind of pramana is valid cognizer, not prime cognizer. But if you assert a prime cognizer, a mind that newly realizes its object, you also need to talk about a subsequent cognizer. A mind that subsequently also realizes its object, which is why you have those 7. But in the Prasangika school, you don't really have that. You don't talk about subsequent cognizers. Because every mind that realizes its object whether for the first time, or the second, or the third moment. There's no distinction between the first moment being better than the later moments. Because it doesn't make sense, really, actually. So therefore, that's also why I didn't talk about the 7, because the 7th is not important. The 7th, as in like this, the subsequent cognizer, is not important. Wrong consciousness, as far as I know, is last. I thought it was wrong consciousness.
Yes, it's
the 7th.
Depends how you start.
Yeah, so it's the direct, it's a prime cognizer, it's a inferential cognizer, subsequent cognizer, correctly assuming. Sorry, an awareness in which the object appears but is not ascertained, correctly assuming, doubt, and wrong consciousness. But like I said, not all of them are accepted in the Kelsang school, which is why I didn't mention them here. Now, of course, if you want to study this topic in great detail, the way it's traditionally done, you don't leave out what I left out. I mean, for instance, the subsequent cognizer. But the reason I did was that you learn about this a lot, but then in the end, it's not that important later, and it's never really mentioned again. So I'm thinking we have so little time, maybe focus more on the parts of the mind that are more important, and that's why I left it out. But some people may disagree with this, and people have different styles, so yeah. So it's definitely good if you actually can go through those 7, which are not part of this. Yes.
I don't know if it's a good time, but
yeah, go ahead.
You said before about, like, also now about different schools.
Ah, yes.
I don't know what it means.
Different. Okay, it really just means when the Buddha taught philosophy, he didn't teach everything he had to teach to just everyone. Just as a professor or a teacher doesn't teach the students everything he knows, they'd be overwhelmed. A teacher would teach according to what's best for the students, and usually that's decided by the class that they're in, for instance, what level they're in. The Buddha was like, he was someone, he went around India, and what he did was, whenever he met a person, so let's assume the Buddha is really omniscient, knows the other person's mind, knows what they need, what is most beneficial, not being omnipotent, call your dad. You're that?
You're there, call.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's not omniscient, he's not omnipotent, but he can teach people the way to get to the goal. But sometimes the entire truth may be overwhelming. So when the Buddha taught, he always taught according to what the person needed, assuming he knew what was right for them. So then he taught some people there is a self. He taught some people there's a self. Others he taught it would have been too scary for them, but he prepared them already for the idea that there is no self, so temporarily he taught something until their minds were more flexible to then teach the next level. And so all these teachings later on, they were recorded, but people remembered them because of their meditational states. They had what's called photographic memory. They had very good memory because of their deep concentration. So later on it was recorded, and then it was divided into different systems. So basically the scholars at the time, the followers of the Buddha at the time, they realized, oh, you can divide it into 4 different philosophical systems, with one being the furthest away from what the Buddha actually meant to teach, and then each one taking you closer to the final view. And so when you start over them, you go deeper and deeper and deeper and further and deepen your understanding. So the highest school is the one that you're aiming for, but the other ones, learning through them, they help you to get a better understanding, because our mind is not so flexible right away to understand the highest view. So this is how you end up with 4 schools, 4 philosophical systems. Yeah. All right. And I've chosen the highest. Well, not of course everything, but the explanation I've given you is from the point of view of the highest school. But that doesn't mean you cannot go back learning about the other schools, of course. Yeah, and it's also not always that when we do our studies, it's not like we always start with the lowest school. We actually don't. We start with the second lowest, and then we go to the Madhyamika, and then we go back to Chittamatra, and then it's like a bit of a back and forth, actually. But there's, in general, this tendency of going step by step. Yeah. Did you raise your hand? Yeah.
Is it right to practice a lot of kinds of meditation, or is the recommendation to have just one and focus on one?
There are different types of meditation, and what is my personal recommendation? Should you just do one, or should you do different ones? I mean, just one? No. Because at least 2. At least stabilizing and analytical. So stabilizing means where you focus on just one object and develop concentration. So taking the breathing, for example, we all need a certain degree of concentration. I'm not saying just do that, but still do it. So to do breathing meditation, for instance, to focus your mind. but to also do analytical meditation. So to take anything that you learned, for instance, here in this class or in other classes, and you're already thinking about it while you're in class, of course, and maybe also in your private free time, etc. But then when you meditate on it, you give it more of an intensity. If you shut out your senses for now and you just focus on it, it just becomes a little bit more intensive. So to think, for instance, well, anger, the way it's been described here, and it will be described again, well, how is this true for my own anger? Does my own anger work like that? How does it arise? What does it lead to? How do I feel when I'm angry? What is the object? Does it exist or not? Is it helpful or not? Until you come to some kind of conclusion, and that conclusion helps you to adjust your actions. Maybe next time you don't get angry as quickly when the situation arises, because you've already seen before, it's never really solved the problem. Okay? So in that way, you need both, stabilizing and analytical. Those two, I think, are good. And you don't have to be a Buddhist. You don't have to take on Buddhism or anything. This is the thing about Buddhism. The Buddha never said become Buddhist. It's all about taking the parts you find helpful. But I think analytical meditation is helpful because we analyze all the time. We don't even get angry without a reason. It may feel that way, but there's always a fraction when someone tells you, like, you are so stupid, or you're so, right? You don't get angry right away. Just you go like, you can watch it when people get abused, like suddenly insulted. They're like, the smile stays a little bit. And then it goes like, and then, it takes a while for it to sink in. So for it to sink in, you start reflecting. How dare they saying that? They're saying that in front of everyone else. This person, I've been really good to them. So now this is how they repay me, right? It's going in your mind very speedily, like very quickly. And then, as a result of this analytical meditation, analyzing that behavior, there's an emotional response, anger. This is how our mind works. Thinking, analysis. Whether it's always in accordance with reality, well, that is to be seen. Oftentimes it's not. But emotional responses are usually the result of some kind of analysis. Of some kind of, it's like this, and therefore they're like, and how dare they? This is not a good person. And they should be punished. And then anger rises. So that's our basic mechanic. Now we're trying to replace harmful emotional states, such as anger, attachment, etc., with productive ones, with the ones that don't harm us. So we use analysis again. Without analysis, we won't do anything. I mean, exercising. Who goes to exercise just because they read, it's good? Next day you start running. Right? You don't do that. What do? Is like you read a whole article. What is the effect on the body? What is the effect on the mind? What is the effect on your shape? What is the effect on your diet? What's the effect? You have like 10 reasons and you go, I need to go jogging. The more reasons, the better. And depending on what reasons are most convincing, then therefore, it lasts for a while, as long as you go jogging. I mean, I don't know whether you jog here until the end of your days, but I know in my own case, I can go for a few weeks, and then I stop it. But, not in Darmstadt, in Germany. The point is that anything we do because it makes sense to us. That's just how our mind works. The human mind works based on that. So therefore, analysis is very important. But here we're hopefully replacing wrong perceptions with correct ones and adjust our behavior accordingly. So I would recommend always analytical meditation. And a lot of people don't like them. There are a lot of people who say, I'm thinking all the time, I'm just adding to all this mind, all this mess. And they don't like it. They like to do something, just no thoughts. Just clearing the mind. That's like taking a sleeping pill. I mean, it's not going to stop you from thinking. It makes you feel good while you're in that state, but it doesn't fix fix anything, just as a sleeping pill doesn't fix anything. It doesn't fix our behavior. Our behavior can only be adjusted when it makes sense to us, when we feel we have some benefit. And initially it's the self-grasping mind that we utilize for our own benefit until we are able to reduce the self-grasping mind. In fact, initially people, and I just mentioned this because it's always a question that comes up. People say to me, well, when you become a Buddhist, you're attached to Buddhism. Of course you are. It's not like you can remove your attachment the moment you turn to Buddhism. No. You use your attachment. I mean, it's a very common situation that previously you were attached to your boyfriend, now you're attached to your Lama. But there's a difference. If it's a good Lama, you're not going to have a relationship with that Lama. In fact, you have a kind of relationship, but it's not a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. And this Lama is dealing with your mind at all times to show you, to reflect your mind. But you're attached. It's the groupie. The groupie, there are the Lama groupies. It's like a whole group of Lama groupies. Right? And you can see it all the time. But that's the first step. Until you learn more and you learn better. But until then, you utilize the self-cherishing mind in order to overcome the self-cherishing mind. You use it in a way in which the self-grasping is able to reduce the self-grasping. Sounds bizarre, right? But that actually works. It's like I usually use the example like how Indian ladies traditionally wash their dishes. A dirty dish, you take dirt and you use dirt to clean out the dirt of the dishes. So here, what you do is the mind that we're most familiar with is the self-grasping mind, self-centered mind. So what do you start off with? You start thinking, oh, I want to be happy. I'm the center of the universe. I need to be happy. So how do I be happier? If I'm more compassionate. If I'm more loving, that gives me more happiness. That's why you want to be more happy. But that's why you start off with meditating on compassion. The Lamas tell you, you're happier if you're more compassionate. And so you start thinking, oh yeah, I want to be happy, so I'll be more loving and content. It's not unconditional love. You expect happiness, at least, in return. But in that way, your mind becomes accustomed towards being more loving and more compassionate. And that automatically reduces the self-centeredness. Right? So like if you do this long enough, that antidote, which because of self-cherishing you applied, now reduces the self-cherishing. And then if someone tells you, well, practicing Dharma is good karma, you don't care. Good karma, bad karma. At least I can help, I can benefit people. That's most important. But you start off with this, right? It's good for me. So that's what the Dalai Lama calls wise selfishness. We're selfish, but we're not wisely selfish. We're stupidly selfish. We're stupidly selfish. We want to be happy. I think my happiness is the most important in the world, so I beat you up because you're in my way. In that way, I actually harm myself so much more. If I act out of the selfish intention harming others, I harm them, I harm myself much more than them. So being wisely selfish means not accumulating non-virtuous or negative action towards others, then I can actually get the happiness I wish for. It's like trying to be healthier by going to McDonald's every day. Right? I want to be healthy. I'm going to eat at McDonald's from now on, day and night. And I'm going to ignore the salad. I have everything but the salad. So that's our way of trying to find happiness. Wanting to be happy, but looking in the wrong place. Right? Okay, so, sorry, that was a really extensive explanation, but as I was talking, I was reminded of questions that may arise, because over the years, there are very similar questions that arise again and again. But we start off by utilizing the self-cherishing mind to our own advantage, and it's through analysis, through understanding, it's beneficial to meditate, or it is beneficial to not be angry, right? And that reduces our anger, And slowly our mind gets transformed. All right. What else? Yes?
I guess about compassion, the movement of compassion. So when I look at the mind also, there is no, the outer phenomena are the inner. So basically if I want to eliminate suffering where it is, I have a tendency to go maybe to the outer and talk about them. But there is a view that I hear a lot, that first we have to look inside. Like, no, don't talk about, like what do you think about?
Let me clarify what you're saying. Are you saying when we talk about suffering, you look at the suffering of others first? Or when we talk about anger, you look at the anger of another person first instead of looking at your own. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like looking at violence that's happening, like directing this.
So you look at things that you actually don't have control over.
I think I have control if I go there and I help, and of course I kind of.
Sometimes you can help, but sometimes you can't, right? Okay.
So I feel that what I got maybe from this retreat and reflecting with myself, that it is right in a way to look at the source of the phenomena, that something.
So are you saying what you've understood is that it's most important first to look inside?
Yes, but not only. Like I can't accept when, and it's very fashionable to say, no, you don't look outside at all.
No, that's wrong.
You have to only look inside.
No, that would be extreme, because you can't separate ourselves really from others. And that's not the idea to totally, it's not like, oh, people are dying all around me, but never mind, I just look at myself. That's not the idea. That would be extreme. But how can I say that? So it's important in terms of suffering to look outside. In Buddhism, there's a lot of emphasis on love and compassion. Well, compassion is the wish for others to be free from suffering. First, I need to recognize how much suffering there is around me. And in fact, it's very helpful, because we're so self-obsessed. Sometimes we only see our own problems, and we don't see the problems of others. So right from the beginning, to look at how many problems are in this world, how much suffering there is. And I'm not alone in my suffering, with what I experience. So from that point of view, it's very helpful. You see what I'm saying? Like sometimes I live in my own universe and I totally forget what's going on around me, and my problem seems to be so big. The moment I look around a little bit, I realize, oh my gosh, it could be much worse. But there's a lot of emphasis on the self, nonetheless, because my experiences come from my own mind. So understanding the mind is so important. And you cannot understand the mind by drawing pictures or looking through a microscope. The only way to understand your own mind is to understand the mind is watch your mind. Because you don't know whether the other person has a mind. For all we know, everyone else could be a zombie. I don't know. I mean, you could be robots or zombies. I don't know you have a mind. I assume you do. And I think I correctly assume you do, but I don't know. The only thing I can really know is my own mind. And since everything comes from the mind, is led by the mind, is controlled by the mind, and in my case, it's my own mind doing so, it's really important to look at our own mind. So this is where the emphasis on the mind comes in. And like afflictive emotions. I mean, even if I want to make a difference in this world, right? If I want to be more kind and more compassionate and help others, I first need to change myself. It's not about preaching. It's not about preaching. You know, that's why the Dalai Lama, when he teaches, he's so effective. Not because of what he says. Not just that. It's because he lives what he says. And subconsciously we know that when the Dalai Lama says something, it affects us very differently to what other people say, because we can feel it's true. It comes from his own experience. So in order to become an effective teacher, like a real teacher, not just I'm not a teacher, we're just discussing, we're just kind of, in Tibetan they call it labla, just talking, right? Labla. But to be, no, I'm serious. To be an actual teacher, like a lama, like the Dalai Lama, like His Holiness the Karmapa, like Kelsang Rinpoche, like all these great lamas. Like I just mentioned him because I know he was here recently. Jadu Rinpoche, like these amazing lamas, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. They have actualized what they talk about. They live what they talk about to every degree. And that is so effective. That is so much more effective. They teach through their example, right? Verbally teaching is only one aspect. But if you're in their presence, you come to see, oh, it's possible. It's possible. You can actually be like that because this person lives what they... And that is more convincing actually than many words. Okay? So that's why in Buddhism, you first live what you want to teach. If you want to teach about compassion, you first try to live it. Not like me, I'm not a good example. But there are these lamas, like really, like I'm serious. I'm not just trying to be modest here. I'm really honest. So a lama like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for instance, the Karmapa, His Holiness the Karmapa, etc. So these lamas, they've done it in the correct way. They first practiced and then they teach. Okay? And that's why the emphasis on the self. Before you teach something, first live it and then teach it. Does that make sense? So this is the internalizing part. But until you get there, no one is saying, don't focus on others. It's part of your development of compassion, then again, to look out. And just with your interaction with another person, watch your own mind. Am I really looking at the other person? Am I just thinking of myself? Or am I concerned for this person? So you do both, as a process of developing these qualities. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So balance is important.
It's connected to what she asked, because isn't it that when we look outside and we see others' behavior, but they teach and they talk, and like me also, how to be good for others. And sometimes I feel that it causes more violence because, as you say, they don't live like this. Like, let's say, for example, be very passionate for the...
Patient? You mean passionate or patient?
Patient. For the... not the immigrants, but the...
Refugees.
The refugee or the foreign workers or some people who they don't know really, but live like far away, and they criticize. We also criticize others that are not. But if a neighbor is starving, they don't see it, or I don't see it. So this is why I think we. So isn't it that it's not? It's also selfish, or it's it's not authentic. That's why maybe...
No, it's true. It's true, it's not authentic, and the thing is, like, you're including yourself, I'm including myself.
Yeah.
It's very easy to say it shouldn't be done, right? And we feel in that moment, I shouldn't be done, but a moment later, I act differently. So,
for example, there's in a communication, it's anti-religious. Without knowing really what they're doing, like in hospitals and this and this and this, anti-religious, and it causes hatred and this. This comes from from wanting to help or from others.
The thing is, like, if we look at our own minds, sometimes we have a pure motivation to help, and 5 minutes later we don't. So people are like that, just like we are, and I guess we can't change others. So all I can do is try myself to be as authentic as possible.
That's why